Morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie Schnyderite, joined by Dylan Callghan-Croley, our co-host. Dylan, the season is over. It was relatively quick, I feel like, but
yeah, it went quick. That's true.
Yeah, I know another 10-win season. Some fans are pissed off, and by some, I mean all. Just give me your overall thoughts on what happened this season and what you think of the entire season. I don't think we saw Yurcich getting fired, so that's pretty new.
Yeah, I mean, in quick, against everybody they should beat, they dominated and won pretty handedly. Those are things you like to see out of a program like Penn State. But then on the other hand, two biggest games of the season, you came up short with two really disappointing offensive performances. You wasted a national championship caliber defense, one of the best defenses we've seen in Happy Valley, and certainly in my lifetime. So one of the best Penn State defenses ever. So I mean, on one hand, really damn good season, but on the other hand, as I've had multiple people say to me, fans, the 10 games are great, but if you don't beat at least one of Ohio State or Michigan, it's kind of a wasted season, especially, in the current era of the college football playoffs. Now, starting next year, that's going to change. Penn State would be a playoff team this year, just like they would have been a playoff team in, 5 of the last 7 years or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, on one hand, really good, but you still – it's almost like stagnant. You still can't get over that hump.
Yeah. I guess let's talk about some of the positives of this team. I guess we could call Drew a large season a positive. I mean, the numbers show he had a great impact on the team. It's just the lack of a long ball.
And here's something that's really eye-opening. And I'm gonna pull it up here as I talk about it. But I was looking at Pro Football Focus's advanced passing statistics, and if you look at Bo Nix and you look at Drew's numbers from an advanced statistic standpoint, the similarities are really really impressive for Drew. So in terms of big time throws, PFF has Bo Nix at 17, Drew at 14. Turnover worthy passes, Bo has 3, Drew has 4. Bo Nix is closing on 4,000 yards passing this year. His average depth of target this year was just 7 yards. Drew's this year was 8 yards. So I mean, the big difference between Drew right now and some of these Heisman Trophy candidates is that Drew doesn't have the wide receivers to make the plays after the catch. You look at Oregon's numbers, and some people may take this into account for Bo Nix's Heisman candidacy, but I think 2 of Oregon's wide receivers have almost 50% of their yards after the catch this season. But Bo has 1,500 more yards than Drew, and that's with the average depth of target being a whole yard less, and everything else really matches up. I think Bo probably does take a little bit more deep shots, but I think looking at that, you look at the big time throws, you look at the turnover worthy passes, it's similar. There's a lot there for Drew to build off of heading into next year, and whether or not he shows what everybody wants him to show during the season next year in terms of passing of the deep passes and making NFL throws week after week remains to be seen. But at the same time, if he does what he did this year, next year, he's still going first round pick, because at the end of the day, NFL general managers and head coaches are going to look at a guy who just had 27 touchdowns and 2 turnovers this season in his first year as a starting quarterback. And against Ohio State and Michigan, he had 1 turnover and no interception, and it was a fumble. It wasn't even an interception.
Yeah, no, definitely a pretty big year for Drew. Even though he lost his OC partially through the season, I guess more than midway through the season. So yeah, that's definitely tough on the quarterback too, because now he's gonna have to learn a totally new offense.
Yep.
I'm not even gonna dive into OC talk right now, but I guess some of the other positives of the team would probably be the defense, the pass rush. You probably name every fucking level of the
Yeah.
defense. To be honest with you,
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that Manny Diaz isn't a finalist for the Broyles Award
weird. I thought.
after the season that they put together. But you're talking about a top 5 defense in almost every statistical category for
Mhm.
Penn State this year. Like I said, this was a national championship level defense that the offense unfortunately wasted. And I think James Franklin realizes that and is a big reason why Mike Yurcich is gone is, he realizes how big those 2 games were this season for Penn State and what this team could have accomplished because of this defense. And, the offense couldn't get it done, but the defense was, phenomenal. Like I said, it's one of the best defenses we've seen in Happy Valley in quite some time.
Yeah. I guess other positives. I'm trying to think. I guess we could switch back to the offense a little bit. The offensive line was pretty good this year, I thought.
Yeah, the offensive line, in the biggest games of the season, they had some struggles, but for the most part, I thought you couldn't ask for much more out of the offensive line. The run blocking probably could have been better. That probably played a part in the running back struggles, but
Mhm.
Drew barely got hit. I mean, I think he took like 12 sacks this year.
Yeah, which isn't bad at all.
No, yeah, 12 sacks this year on um, only pressured, I think, about 10% of the time. They did a really good job, and
Mhm.
even against Michigan, I thought they did a decent job, which was impressive. Fortunately, couldn't do much against Ohio State, but
Mhm.
yeah, from Troutwine, I thought this was a good season for him. That first year or two was kind of a struggle, but now that he has his guys in there, he's had some time to work with these guys extensively. You can see it paid off this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely been a season of positives. I don't want to harp too much on the negative, but
I
I
would
guess.
I would say one more positive would be the special teams for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, yeah,
Alex
definitely.
Falcons goes from an inconsistent FCS kicker who
Hmm.
I think made 67% of his kicks at
Hmm.
Columbia to one of the better kickers in the Big Ten. Was very consistent for Penn State. Was quite a bright light on what still a good season, but kind of what would be a rather disappointing season. Um, uh, Riley Thompson, you know, got better as the season went on. Was really impressive,
Hmm.
and there's I believe an opportunity he could return. I know questions about his eligibility, but I think there's a chance he could return. Felkins is out of eligibility,
Hmm.
and then Daquan Hardy, on the punt return was once he took over after that UMass game was pretty good as well. But
Yeah.
I thought Stacey Collins has done a really nice job with Penn State special teams since he got here, and
Hmm.
this was a really good year for that special teams. But now we can talk about the negatives for sure.
Yeah. Real quick on the special teams, I do have to question what the hell happened in the beginning of the season. Why was Hardy not back there in the beginning of the season? Why was Falcons not
Yeah,
the main kicker at the beginning of the season?
sure.
It's like definitely big question marks, but they did seem to adjust relatively quickly, especially at kicker, and it,
Yeah,
it
I
ended up
mean,
paying off.
it took half a game for Falcons to really take over that starting kicking job, and then
Yeah.
yeah, with Hardy, yeah, it's not even this season. Hardy never returned a punt until the UMass game, and
Hmm.
then returned two in the UMass game. Almost returned a punt. He almost returned two more, I think, over the course of the remainder of the season. Uh,
Yeah.
but Franklin says it goes back to consistency in practice and such. But I don't
Hmm.
know. I guess that's why we're not college coaches because you think you'd just put your best playmaker, especially one that over the last few years, Hardy's been an important piece, but he hasn't been, that hugely vital piece that you can't really risk getting injured. But there's Nick Singleton on kick return, so
Yeah. I'm always in the boat of putting your best player back there, our best athlete back there specifically, just because it's
playmakers,
such a playmaker.
play,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just
playmakers
such
make
a
plays.
such a game-changing effect when you have a good kick or punt returner.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference. And just even if it's like I'm not saying touchdowns every time, but even like a 20, 30-yard return past that stupid 25-yard mark that they give them now.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference.
Especially when there's an offense that struggles to move the ball sometimes. Those extra 20 yards, 15, 20 yards can make a whole lot of a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, unfortunately, we're gonna have to harp on the negatives a bit. I don't even want to talk about the two games specifically. I want to talk about the offensive play calling.
Sure.
It seems like it was just abysmal this year under Yurcich, and Franklin kind of threw some shade at Yurcich, I feel like, in the post-game press conference this weekend, saying, hey, we wanted to play two quarterbacks the entire time.
Yeah,
or maybe it was last weekend.
He's definitely been throwing some shade at him over the last few weeks since that Michigan game. And I get it. I mean, those two games stop Penn State from being a college. Even Penn State wins one of those games, they may be a college football playoff team right now, because you'd be hard to find a resume that's better than Penn State with a win over a top 25 Iowa and a win over a top 10 team in Michigan and Ohio State. They may be a playoff team still. And those two performances in those games were absolutely abysmal. So two of the worst games we've seen in the James Franklin era from an offense. And like I said, the defense was national championship caliber. If that offense has a life beat for a majority of this season, or at least in the two biggest games of the season, we could be talking about Penn State competing for a national championship this year. Because you look around college football, I'm not sure there's really an elite team in college football right now. Washington's undefeated, but Washington has almost lost for 5 straight weeks. Georgia is obviously really good, but they're not the juggernaut they have been, it seems, of the last few years. And I think Michigan's good, but I look at Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, and they all kind of feel like the same team. It just comes down to Ohio State has Marvin Harrison Jr., Penn State doesn't, and then for Michigan, that offensive line is just better than everybody else's, and that's a huge part of that. But the offensive play calling though wasn't pretty bad, and I thought it was solid the last two games of the season, but too late at that point.
Yeah. Safe assumption, and this is just based off what you know and what you've been told. I'm assuming neither of those guys is going to be the offensive coordinator next year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. I just don't know if you can risk not bringing in an OC that has extensive experience in doing so. Because you answered a fact or fiction on the side today. If this hire doesn't go right for James Franklin, could he be on thin ice? And I absolutely think that's fact. If the buyout for James Franklin is going to be not significantly, but it's going to be quite lower in about 3 years. And this offense coordinator will obviously get at least two years at this. And if it doesn't work out, then I mean that spells a lot of bad news for James Franklin. So I get why some people want Sider to be the OC, trying to keep him around, but I don't think you need to absolutely. I don't think if he's not OC, he's not sticking around. Would it help? Yeah, sure, it definitely would help, but at the end of the day, I don't think A necessarily equals B here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be more concerned of Sider getting an OC job somewhere else, especially because it seems like Florida's going to purge their staff, or already started to on the defensive side at least.
I agree.
And then I think that's one to watch out for. I think he's very close with Fran Brown. I don't think it happens, but if Fran Brown, I shouldn't say this. I think Fran Brown gets the Syracuse job, and I know he's very close with Fran Brown. I don't think he would join Fran Brown in Syracuse, but I know they're very close to each other. Nor do I think Syracuse has the budget to outbid Penn State.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Penn State, the assistant salary pool has gone up significantly. Money, and that's everything. Money doesn't seem to be a factor in this offensive coordinator search. So if it's not, now that doesn't mean Penn State's going to go out and hire an offensive coordinator, pay him, groundbreaking numbers like $3, $4, $5 million. But the highest paid coordinators in college football, based off the numbers we know right now, are about 2.3 million. That's Riley Garrett down at Clemson, Ryan Grubb at Washington in that 2 million range as well. And I'm sure Manny Diaz on the defense side of the ball is going to be near that $2 million, maybe is right now or maybe next year. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about Sider jumping ship to a Syracuse right now.
It doesn't make sense.
No, I don't think Syracuse being OC at Syracuse gets him closer to a head coaching job than being the assistant head coach, associate head coach, running backs coach, co-offense coordinator at Penn State. He's going to have that co-offense coordinator title still, and he's going to be paid a very nice salary to do so. Yeah, so I wouldn't be worried about that. But yeah, that Syracuse one is going to be interesting. I'm not sure there's anybody on staff that Fran Brown would take, but that would be one to watch just because of the proximity.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned it on our boards already, so we can mention it on here. Khalil Ahmad, New Jersey guy, worked with Fran at Rutgers. Actually, ended up working at Syracuse for several years, where he kind of built his brand up a little more.
Yeah, right before he jumped to Penn State.
Jumped to Penn State. Now again, I do think Penn State would probably go back at him and be like, "Hey, you're not leaving. Like, here's an offer." Especially because
they've been cleaning up in New Jersey since he got into town.
Yeah, I know Jalen Matthews isn't committed anymore, but he was committed. So that's one. Then you got DJ McClary, Vabu Toure in 2024, DJ McClary in 2025, Amari Gaines in 2025. And they're also doing very well with several others in Jersey, like Jameer Joseph, who's a top DB, Quincy Porter, top wide receiver. Kamar Archie's a top 250 kid who's probably going to move up into that 150 range, I was told. So there's a bunch of other names too. Desi Jones is going to be a 4-star eventually. There's so many Jersey kids in these upcoming classes, and I keep saying 2025 for New Jersey is the deepest it's been in like a long time.
Yeah, and it really worked out well for Penn State that they brought on Ahmad right when New Jersey's prospect pool was filling back up, because for a while there Penn State wasn't recruiting New Jersey, but at the same time, and you know more than I, but it felt like for a few years there, the talent level in New Jersey kind of took a little bit of a dip compared to where it was in the early 2010s, mid 2010s. It took a little bit of a dip, but now, like you said, 2025 is insanely deep. 2024 was a good cycle, and it looks like it's getting back to where it was in 2010 and well on before that as well.
Yeah, I know in the past they've used to lose a lot of guys, like say, for example, James Hurd and Kyle McCord. These are guys, or Jersey guys, that end up going to St. Joe's Prep over the border to Pennsylvania, and now they're starting to stick closer to home now and staying with their hometowns or one of the premier Catholic or prep programs throughout the state. So,
and I mean, Penn State was in there for bigger names, going up there. They were right in there for guys like Jabril Peppers and Rashawn Gary way back when too, and just missed those types of guys too. So, got a second chance here with Ahmad, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that Syracuse job. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's one to keep an eye on. In terms of offensive coordinator name specifically, I know we've been told Joe Moorhead's a little bit on the back burner for now.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to call him a fallback option, but it does. I think he's a candidate, a legitimate candidate. But I think that there's definitely a couple guys that James may have above Joe, and if those guys don't work out, I think he's very much comfortable with going with Moorhead. But yeah, we'll see what happens there.
I want to single in on two specific names. Colin Klein, Kansas State offensive coordinator for the past 2 seasons, former QB / co-OC, former quarterback coach, blah, 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 blah. The titles at Kansas State go on and on. But he was recruited to Kansas State by James Franklin. Yes. Now he runs one of the better offenses in the country. Just tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, I mean, former Heisman finalist there at Kansas State, was recruited by James Franklin there. Now, he signed after Franklin left, but he committed to Franklin and Ricky Ronnie at the time
Mm-hmm.
at Kansas State. Um, yeah, he's been around the block now for a few years in the coaching circles. He was I think at Northern Iowa before he went to Kansas State. But yeah, at Kansas State, the last 2 years, they've developed one of the better offenses in all of college football. Developed Will Howard into a top of the line quarterback. Howard just entered the transfer portal yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and as of right now, is going to be probably the top name in the portal. I know Tyler
Yeah.
Van Dyke down in Miami also into the portal, but uh, Howard's going to be that guy that everybody's vying to land this year. Uh, could he land at somewhere like a Michigan, who JJ McCarthy's gone? Oregon
Mm-hmm.
is going to need a quarterback after Bo Nix is gone. Um, so there's a good chance we may see Will Howard play Penn State next year. I think, but yeah, Kansas State's been really impressive offensively. Klein has definitely risen in the offense coordinator ranks as
Mm-hmm.
over these last 2 years because of that. And he's also a pretty good recruiter, and developer. Will Howard wasn't the highest level recruit. He got developed into a very good quarterback. He was
Mm-hmm.
able to have a quality offense as well with Adrian Martinez, who we know who he was based on his time in Nebraska. They have a really young quarterback right now, Avery Johnson, who's been impressive when he has played, and
Mm-hmm.
is expected to be pretty good for the Wildcats. So we'll see. I'm sure it may be a little hard to pry him from Manhattan just because that's his alma mater, and he may just want to be there until he can become a head coach. But
Yeah.
Penn State has the money. That being said, Penn State has the money to outbid Kansas State if it comes down to a money thing. And
Mm-hmm.
as we just learned in the Big Ten, the alma mater thing is great, but it's not a, a stranglehold. Jonathan Smith was an Oregon State alum, was an Oregon State folk hero for what he was
Yeah.
able to do on the football field. Was seen as the savior of the program for the last 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be, and then now he's seen as a
Hater.
um, um, yeah, as a traitor, as a Judas. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. He's that's a rough one. Now another guy on the opposite side of the state. I actually don't know if it's on the opposite side of the state. I don't know where Lawrence is, but compared to Manhattan. But regardless, it's still in
within the state.
Kansas. Yeah, it's somewhere in there in that weird state that no one really goes to.
No.
Um, some Kansas hate there. Anthony Coltonecki,
Yeah.
offensive coordinator at Kansas, has been the offensive coordinator for Lance Leipold since 2013, dating back to their days at Wisconsin Whitewater. Went to Buffalo with them, now at Kansas with them, making $1 million per year. I think Penn State could easily outbid that one, right?
Yeah, and Colton Nicky's somebody we've had on our hot board for quite a while now,
Yeah.
since day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, now will he make the would he make the jump is the question, because you look at his history. This is a guy who's only ever been with Lance Leipold. Is he willing to move? Stay with? Is he willing to move off the Lance Leipold coaching staff before he gets
Mm-hmm.
his own head coaching opportunity?
Yeah.
That's the major question. He is definitely loyal to Lance Leipold. He's with him at Kansas. He was with him at Buffalo, and then they were
Mm-hmm.
at Wisconsin Whitewater together. I believe that's what they were.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's been with him for over a decade, I think, at this point. Penn State, I think, could absolutely outbid Kansas, but I'm just not sure that Colton Nicky really wants to leave Leipold.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good thing going there, and Lance doesn't seem like he's going to get a new job this year,
Yeah.
but he's not going to be at Kansas forever. He's going to be at a pretty big Power 5 school
Mm-hmm.
sooner than later, probably next year at this time. So would he
Yeah.
rather jump to Penn State, or would he rather, roll the dice and see what happens? Now, next year
Mm-hmm.
can go extremely poorly, and they all get stuck at Kansas. But
Yeah.
based off what we've seen out of Kansas, that doesn't seem like the case. But Who knows?
I mean, no, he made Kansas Bowl eligible for the first time since
Yeah,
2008, so it's very impressive.
absolutely.
He was also nominated for the Broyles Award last year. He
Yeah,
he was a great OC. The interesting thing with him and Leipold too, and I think Leipold's just holding out for a solid, and
yeah,
I mean a solid Big Ten job, because they are Midwest natives. Like
yeah,
Leipold's a Wisconsin guy through and through. Koltonicki's a Minnesota native, but coached at Wisconsin, not at Wisconsin specifically, but their sister campuses in River
yeah.
Falls and Whitewater for several years.
Yep.
I think both of them are going to end up in the Big Ten eventually. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
And it sounded like Leipold was a serious candidate for Michigan State before it all kind of went to Smith.
Yeah, he definitely was among the names discussed. I also know Mike Elko was among the
Mm-hmm.
top candidates there. And oh yeah, we'll see how that Michigan State stuff goes. I've it's been very interesting, at least for me, because I get to also cover Oregon State for our Oregon State sister side, and I help out the Michigan State side with some recruiting stuff as well here and there. And yeah, it's been interesting to be on both sides of that because there's a lot of different opinions from both sides. But
Of course.
uh,
One thing I want to touch on before we go any further into this year's team, and I guess I'm not even in this year's team, the offseason.
yeah,
We talked about it, I think, last time. I think we mentioned it last time. We might not have. Manny Diaz, Duke. I know you've mentioned it actually
yeah,
before, I think anyone, and then all of a sudden it's on The Athletic, it's on somewhere else, it's here and there. It makes sense.
for sure, for sure. The Athletic, I felt like I'm that was something that I immediately had, when Elko left. I immediately identified. Obviously, posted
Mm-hmm.
on Twitter. I was texting you about it, and then for a while, nobody else, in the country was really kind of talking about it. So I just
Mm-hmm.
felt like, okay, maybe I'm just totally off base here. But then we saw Bruce Feldman post him on his big board for Duke, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt better about that. But yeah, I think it's definitely a job that makes sense for Manny Diaz. He's spent time in the South. He's spent time in North Carolina with North Carolina State. Now that was back when he was a GA, and I think he may have had a short stint as a linebackers coach or DC there as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but Manny obviously is somebody who I think enjoys being in the South. I'm not sure exactly how much he enjoys being in a place where you walk outside
Yeah.
and your face hurts from being outside.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in New Jersey, but the last few days in
Yeah.
central Pennsylvania have been pretty cold.
It's the
Um,
same.
but yeah, I think that's a job that definitely would make sense, and he would have interest in. Elko set a really nice foundation there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a place where I think you can have success, and you don't need to have success for an extended period of time. It is going to be a stepping stone job for most likely eternity. David Cutcliffe was there for a long time, but I don't see Manny Diaz, going to Duke and being like, "This is where I want to be the rest of my career."
You
But
tell
if
the
you,
not that, but
yeah,
you just, not really.
it's not like James Franklin in a Penn State job, like, and
Mm-hmm.
even James Franklin, or if you believe all the rumors, has flirted with other jobs, but that
Yeah,
also
of
comes just being
course.
being a head coach. But I mean, you look beyond this year. If he doesn't take the Duke job, um, other coaches that are on the hot seat. Obviously, Lincoln Riley is on the hot seat. I think there's a betting board that came out. Probably, I think it was Bet Online, who who put Riley as the best odds to be the next coach fired. Um, he's not going to get the
Crazy.
USC job, but there's Arkansas now. That could be an intriguing job. Florida is
Mm-hmm.
going to open up in probably next year. I don't
A
think Billy
year.
Napier is going to
Yeah.
turn that thing around. I said the same thing about Neil Brown though, so who knows? But Florida could
Shocked to
open
that
up.
one.
I think Baylor possibly opens up, but I don't know if Baylor goes back to back DCs. Um, but
That's
basically there's going to be notable coaching jobs open next year. So does he want to, if he gets offered the Duke job, does he want to take Duke or does he want to roll the dice and potentially take a shot at one of the little bit bigger jobs next year? Or in the case of Florida, a
mm-hmm.
whole lot bigger. I mean, if would Florida be interested? Who knows? But it would make sense in terms of he's a Florida guy. He's a damn good coordinator. Obviously, Billy
Yeah.
Napier, who is from the offense side of the ball, hasn't been working out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be interesting, and that would be a case where you would then have to worry about Sauter becoming an offense coordinator at Florida.
At Florida.
But yeah, I think overall Duke makes sense for Manny Diaz. I'm not sure if he's interested, but the question for him is, if you get offered, do you take the Duke job this year, or do you roll the dice, wait till next year, see what happens with Penn State's defense, which is going to lose quite a bit of talent, but should still be very good, and see if you can get a bigger job.
Duke actually pays a lot more than I thought they would. They pay $7 million a year to Elko.
Yeah, it's not a
it's better paying than I thought for
yeah,
them.
absolutely
For hoop school, I should say.
Yeah.
Definitely interesting there. We'll have to keep an eye out on that because there is always a ton of movement. And I shouldn't say a ton of movement. There's always some type of movement in the coaching staff every offseason, whether it be off the field roles mostly, but even last year, I don't know if we saw a wide receivers coach coming in and it ended up happening. So
yeah, and I mean that didn't happen until
April?
late January.
January? Was it January? I don't
Yeah.
remember. Jeez. Yeah, so you just got to keep an eye out for those things. But something to definitely monitor between the two coordinator spots, one that's currently open and one that could be open. But I want to move on to go back to talking about the team. I want to play stay or go, little game.
All right, stay or go.
I'm going to name these juniors. Actually, I'm going to give you three options: stay, go, transfer.
Stay, go, transfer.
I'm going to name the juniors that have eligibility to leave after now that the season's over. And just basically, you can give me a quick synopsis if they're going to stay, they're going to go, or they could enter the portal.
Sure.
Number one, we're just going to go through the position by position. So we'll just start with Trey Potts, Pennsylvania guy, back in PA.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Obviously, just transferred in last offseason from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Had a nice role. Had a nice showing this year, but didn't have the biggest role.
Mm-hmm.
I would lean stay, but I think this is one where the coaching staff sits down, tells him, where he's probably going to be in the pecking order next year, because you're going to have Cam Wallace, you're going to have London Montgomery, who both redshirted this year, and then you're bringing in Quinton Martin. So do they see him having a role next year? I'll lean stay right now, but I could see him. I could see him going. I don't know if he would transfer, but maybe he takes again a roll of the dice, takes a chance on the NFL or one of the other pro leagues.
See, if it wasn't for his injury history, I think he'd go pro. But he's obviously significant injury history, which makes me think we could see him either stay or portal, just because he could get one last shot somewhere. And I think he could start for a couple like the lower Power 5 teams.
Yeah, and that's why I was a little I wasn't surprised that he ended up Penn State, but when he entered the portal from Minnesota, I thought this is a guy who can go to quite a bit of schools and become a starting running back, because he was really good when healthy at Minnesota. And so I definitely agree that if he does portal, he'll have his opportunities to have a much bigger role than he will at Penn State, because let's be honest, barring injury, he's not going to be the number one. He's not going to be the number two. And we'll see which true freshman next year or redshirt freshman takes the reins of that number 3 spot if it's not Potts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he showed some burst this year, though. I was impressed. Next one might be the toughest one. Dante Cephas.
I think he has to stay. I don't think he developed his draft stock at all, to be honest. So I think he has to stay, which we'll see. I mean, we often said early on, this is a guy who came in last January, that this season may go differently, but it was clear as the season went on, he just couldn't get a grasp of the playbook. So that excuse kind of goes off out the door, because I mean, if you're not getting the playbook 5 months into the season, when are you going to be able to grasp it? But I think he has to stay, which I think he could have a really nice season next year. I do.
Yeah, I think it was more so when I say it's the most complicated one is because he could technically go back in the portal and go somewhere else.
He could, but is he going to end up at a better place than Penn State after this year?
I just don't know if will Penn State replace him is more so my question, I guess.
It's also good.
Yeah. So, Keandre Lambert Smith, has he peaked enough to go to the NFL? Can he improve his draft stock more?
This is 50-50. I can see him going to the NFL. I can see him going to Penn State, staying at Penn State. It's just the inconsistencies, man. He one week can look like, and I think he finished top 5, top 10 in receiving yards in the Big Ten. But
Yeah.
he's somebody who can be a dominant number one wide receiver, but just isn't consistent enough to do it. I probably lean him. I really don't know what to think on this one. This is the one that's really toughest for me.
Yeah.
Because I honestly don't think he's like, if I was an NFL GM, I wouldn't draft him before maybe the late 4th round because he's going to test decently well. So I guess right now I lean towards him going pro, but I think he really should stay.
I tend to agree with you. I think he has enough confidence to go pro. I'll tell you that much. The kid loses confidence.
The question for Penn State is just, do you want him back? I lean towards probably yes, because you really have no other answers. At least you know kind of what you're getting out of him. Well, you know what you're getting. You're getting a guy who can be really good, just inconsistent. But do you want to go through those inconsistencies again this year? I guess for Penn State, how much worse off is the wide receiver room with or without KLS next year is what they have to answer. And if they feel like it's not that much worse off, maybe they suggest him going to the NFL.
Yeah. I feel like he beats up on Porter's defense, too. I know he finished 8th. It was 673 yards, but 123 versus West Virginia, 96 versus Maryland, and 95 versus Maryland, 96 versus Indiana.
So what?
That's like
half your games, three games, half your yards.
Yeah, against shit defenses. So it's like, and then he doesn't show up against like Illinois. He puts up 23, and it's like,
and then Ohio State, Michigan, he had a combined
58 yards on 7 catches, 6 of those yards in Michigan. Yeah, it doesn't show up in big time, and that's an issue.
And that was the problem with Penn State's wide receivers all year, is that I think they have two really good, maybe even 3 decently good number 2, number 3 guys in KLS, Wallace, and Cephas. They just have no true number 1 guy to go to. If they had a Mitchell Tinsley this year, I think this team could have won one of those games.
Yeah, of course. Mitch, who I don't know what he's doing in the NFL. Actually, I haven't really looked. Practice squad.
Practice squad with he may be on 53, but I think last time I checked, he was with the Commanders.
Yeah. Next up, Malik Mega. 4 seasons now, 9 games played, like 3 catches. I think the writing's on the wall a little bit there.
I just can't believe Malik Mega still has eligibility.
Yeah, he technically 2020 didn't count, so he has 1 more year.
Special teams, it's hard to replace special teams aces, and he's that, and he's been a captain, good locker room guy. I think you gotta keep that type of stuff around. I can't believe he's only been it's 4 years, but it felt like a lot longer. But
it's weird because that first year never counts for anyone now, and COVID messed everything up. It's so wacky.
Yeah, so I think he stays around just because invaluable on special teams and team captain. And even if he doesn't perform on the field beyond special teams, having that type of team captain, that leader in the locker room, is very important to have.
Very true. This one's a weird one. He's also entering year 4 now. But he transferred in last offseason. A lot of hype on him. Malik McLean, stay, transfer, go. I don't think he goes.
I don't think he goes or transfers because I don't think he'd be a graduate transfer yet. So, if he, he's staying. Yeah. Now, disappointing season for sure. Looked really good in that West Virginia game, and then disappeared for most of the season. So disappointing, but we'll see. if he likes Cephas, he can take that step in his development this year because and 6'4", 206. It's
Yeah.
really good size and he's good speed, and we'll see. But yeah, definitely disappointing season for him. But I think he stays.
Yeah, not a great one for him at all. Next up, it's an intriguing one. It's kind of a duo, I guess. I'm gonna lump these ones together. Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren. Do you think they both stay, both go? One stays, one goes.
I think Theo goes.
Yeah.
Theo's numbers have never really been eye opening, but he's going to go to the combine. He's going to test pretty well, and he's going to end up being a third round draft pick, maybe even sneaking in the second round. You're going to look at the physical
Mm-hmm.
tools, you're going to look at the measurements. I think he's going to go on to the NFL, have a decently nice career. May not be, he may be limited in the NFL because he can only really be a pass catcher, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a really good pass catcher. And I think he could have had a better year with better play call. So I think he goes. I
Mm-hmm.
think Tyler Warren returns. And with Theo, I just don't know if him staying really raises his draft stock much.
True.
Tyler Warren, I think definitely can. I think can definitely raise his draft stock more. Maybe being that number one wide receiver, tight end next year. So I think he
True.
stays.
Yeah, he did finish sixth among tight ends in terms of yardage this year for the Big Ten.
Okay.
Theo Johnson finished fifth. So I mean, they're both right there. Like
Yeah,
they're both
both are very
very
good. Both are
similar.
going to play in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Tyler Warren might have the higher ceiling, which is a good
Yeah,
thing if
he's.
he returns.
I mean, Theo Johnson's a good athlete, but Tyler Warren's kind of a freak athlete.
Yeah. Offensive line room. There's a lot of them, so I'm just gonna name them off and just give me a quick stay go transfer.
Yeah,
Golden Israel Chumba.
one of those guys who he seems to be a pretty big locker room guy, so I'm going to lean towards
Mm-hmm.
stay. But see, those are one of the I think having those locker room guys is important, so I'm going to say stay.
Nick Dawkins.
He's aligned to be a potential starter at center next year. Stay.
True. Olu Fashanu.
We were
How do you
surprised he
not?
stayed last year. I don't think Penn State's getting lucky 2 years in a row.
Yeah. JB Nelson.
Stay.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. Traore. I don't know how to pronounce
that. Stay.
Oh, really? I think that. I was a little intrigued to see if he stays or not. The toughest one among this O-line group, probably Caden Wallace.
I'm gonna lean off to NFL. I think he did a good job at raising his draft stock this year. Was one of Penn State's better offensive linemen all year. So I'm gonna say he goes off to NFL.
Ooh, okay, that's an interesting one, but it makes sense based on some of the previous guys Penn State's got in the league. So, and they have a real track record growing.
Yeah, and it's with Caden Wallace. Your stock is at probably definitely at an all-time high.
Yeah,
I think you risk losing stock more than you risk gaining it next year. So
yeah. Defensive ends, Fisher.
Stay.
Yeah, I figured that one. Chop Robinson. I think we know the answer here.
Yeah, he's off to the NFL.
Yep, first round pick. Probably one of, if not the first edge rusher off the board.
Yeah, it'd be one of the first few at least.
Yeah, I know they're projecting him like 17, 18-ish right now, but I think he goes higher.
I think once he tests, he'll go higher.
Yeah, of course. Amin Vanover.
Stay. I think he's in line to be a starter next year for Penn State, and
We've been saying that for a while.
Yeah, feels like he's been here for a long, long time.
Yeah,
he should start opposite of Denai Dennis Sutton next year. So I think he's staying.
that'd be a cool one. Alonzo Ford. You just assume based on injury.
I'd assume he's staying around unless he wants to hang up the cleats. Not playing this year because of that injury. It didn't end up really being a huge factor for Penn State. The defense tackle stepped up, but they're going to lose some DTs this year, so him coming back, it will be big for them.
Hakeem, Devon, it's
Yep,
it's gonna be rough. They're gone, but Keziah Izzard probably stay.
Probably stays. He's one of those guys, kind of like KLS, but on the defense side of the ball, flashes a ton, but just doesn't always have the consistency you'd like. I'd probably lean towards him staying, but I wouldn't. It's staying or transferring, but I think I'd say probably staying.
Okay. Linebackers, Tyler Elston.
I think there's a lot of people who want me to say one thing, but I will say stay for now.
Leave. Damn it. Yeah, a lot of people are not happy with his play, and rightfully so. It's been bad.
Yeah, I think he's somebody who he's fine in short bursts in certain situations, but he definitely struggles against the more athletic teams like Ohio State, like Michigan.
Yeah, that was shown pretty obviously. Curtis Jacobs, interesting one.
Yeah, I think he's off the NFL. I think he's going to be a second round draft pick, maybe could sneak into top 40 draft picks after he tests at the combine.
Yeah, he had a lot of preseason hype, I remember, and I really didn't see it as like a second day pick, and then all of a sudden he had this season. I'm like, all right, never mind. They saw something I didn't like. It was just
uber athletic linebacker.
Yeah. Callghan King, probably.
Yeah, that's kind of the tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you look, and I forget if he's a junior off the top of my head, but you look at Johnny Dixon, and Johnny Dixon absolutely is going to the NFL. He has raised his draft stock a ton. Yeah. He's going to the NFL. Callghan King, his draft stock arguably fell quite a bit this season because he was good to start, and then he had a 3-week stretch where he was just getting burned and burned and burned. I could see him. I think he goes to NFL because he's still going to be at worst a day 2 draft pick.
Yeah.
But if he thinks he could get back into that first round conversation, I could see him returning. That would be big for Penn State. I still think. Sorry, he's a really good player, but I'd say right now go to NFL.
Yeah, because there is a big question mark at corner next year with Dixon, Harding, and potentially King gone. So
yeah, that's going to be the make or break spot of this defense next year. The linebackers will be fine because you lose Curtis Jacobs, but Tony Rojas should be able to step up next year into a really big role. You have Keon Wiley, who's flash as well. But corner,
I guess King could technically leave too at
both Kings could technically leave, but I think Kobe stays.
Yeah, I didn't even think to name the redshirt sophomores, to be honest with you. They'll be third year redshirt juniors next year. But last but not least among the juniors, Reed at safety.
Yeah, I think he stays, but they got probably one more year with him because he's going to be off to the NFL, I think, after next year. Maybe he's a guy who stays 4 years. But, Jalen Reed's been, well, I guess next year will be 4 years. But Jalen Reed's been really impressive. I think Penn State's in a very, very good spot, I'll say, at safety next year with him, with Zachy Wheatley, and then KJ Winston. I mean, they got at least 2 bona fide NFL safeties in Winston and Reed. And I think Wheatley very much can be in the NFL as well. But they're in a very good. As much as there's question marks about cornerback next year, I think they're in a really, really good spot at safety.
Yeah, they've been phenomenal at DB recently. And it goes to show you based on the way they've been playing.
There's very few schools the last few years that have been producing safeties to the level that Penn State has.
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, Jaquan, Jair, and now you got 2 or 3 more guys who could go to the NFL next year in 2020 for the 2025 draft. And then, I mean, they're doing it at all 3 levels on the defense. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So, that's all I got really for the stay go game thing that we were playing. That's really it. We're starting to run long on this one, so I'm trying to wrap it up. But any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just looking through, seeing if there's any other guys that I think maybe, could potentially leave or
I thought maybe, and he won't because of his brother, but Liam Clifford.
yeah, I think I think that's an interesting one. I think guys who are in interesting spots are like uh, who are in an interesting spot of stay, maybe not have the role you expect, or go somewhere else. Um, like Keaton Ellis, um, Tyrese Mills,
Thought that was an interesting one.
like those, and Keaton Ellis is a senior, but I believe he has one more year of eligibility. Um,
Yeah,
they,
yeah, because he might have redshirted this year. Technically,
um, let me
did he
see here.
redshirt this year? How much did Keating else play?
Daquan Hardy, I believe, has a sixth year remaining as well. I'm counting only 5 years for him. So I mean, that's a guy who could very well go into the NFL, be a draft pick, or he could return. That would be big for them. Ellis didn't play it. He played a decent amount this year, but didn't play a huge amount of snaps.
You are right. Hardy does technically have another year.
But Hardy's, in a very interesting spot as well. I think they only have one guy who's really a 6-year senior, and that's Hunter Norzad.
Salim Wormley.
I think Salim may have. I think he has that 6 year, and now all those
2019
one.
redshirted, 2020 played. Oh, he missed it. Yeah, no, he has one more too. You're right.
So I mean,
Wow.
you look at all those 5th-year guys who have maybe that 6 year, but you can't keep all of them. I mean, and this is the really crappy part for head coach in college football
Have the
is
talk.
there's some hard conversations you're going to have with a lot of these guys, whether they're redshirt seniors or guys who you got to say like, hey, this is the situation. You're probably not going to play a ton next year. Um, I'll finish with this. Deion Sanders got a lot of crap last year for the whole telling guys, hey, you got to go. You're not going to have a place here.
Mm-hmm.
He got a lot of crap for it because it got out. But that's what happens pretty much around the country. Some
Every
coaches are a little
program.
bit nicer about it, but that's what happens across the country. This is tough conversation season.
Yeah, it is definitely not easy. Does it? Oh, wow, their defensive tackles all return mostly, right?
Theoretically, they could all return, but
They could, yeah.
I think you look at guys like a Von Ellis, like a Hakeem Beamon, whether that's to the NFL or off to the next phase of their life. I would not expect either of those guys to return.
Yeah, I'm looking now. Riley Thompson's out of eligibility too. I know we talked special teams before, right? He's
So
got a
Riley
weird
Thompson, there is
rule.
a gray area because the NCAA, despite Australians being in college football for the last 15, 20
However,
years,
yeah,
there's still gray area there, but
yeah.
there, I believe, is a chance he can return.
The 2022 freshman All-American is now ranked as a senior.
Yeah, it's
Make it
highly,
make
highly
sense.
confusing of how that whole thing worked out, but and don't take that as gospel, but I believe there is a chance he can return. I may have
I don't
another
know
year
how
left.
it really depends on that school deacon or whatever he went to.
Yeah, it's
And I know the eligibility over there is always funky because like when a punter comes over, it's always like he's a sophomore to start, and it's like, wait, what? Like,
yeah, right, exactly, and
but they're
yeah,
saying he's
so
a
there's
junior to start.
there's a
So
chance he can return. If not, Penn State looks the way of Alex Paqueta next year.
yeah, and
But
might
if they
actually
could
get to
get
see him
Thompson
punt
back,
some.
that would be pretty big.
Oh yeah, I think you definitely take it if you can. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I know I
Yeah.
asked you for final thoughts before, but any last things before on maybe OC talk?
Yeah. I would just say in general, I would expect offense coordinator to be named here in the next 6 days. I think you have to have an OC before the transfer portal opens
I agreed.
on
The
next
fifth,
Monday.
sixth, whatever it is, fourth. Jeez, I don't even know what day
So
it is.
next Monday, I think you have to have an OC name. So that makes sense. I'd give James about a week, 9 days from Friday. If you look from the Michigan State game to the day the portal opens, 9 days to really look hard at hires, talk to coaches. So I think that would make sense. But yeah, other than that, if you took advantage of our 75% off sale for Black Friday / Cyber Monday, thank you for doing so. If you missed that opportunity, no worries. You can go over there, still get our 30-day free trial, and check us out. We're going to have plenty of information on Penn State's offense coordinator search. Transfer portal is going to heat up here very soon.
Crazy.
Already 300 FCS names in there. Already 200 FBS names in there, just off kids who have lost coaches or graduate transfers. So I mean, there's plenty to be discussed. Recruiting still ongoing. Penn State's 2024 class mostly complete. May have some finishing touches to put on, but 2025 class is heating up already. And there is no offseason in college football. There's no offseason.
No, there is not. Trying to see where. What was that promo code again for that 30-day free trial? I can't find it.
That is a good HVI 30, I believe it was.
HVI 30. There you go. Took me a minute to find that one. Yeah, HVI 30, Happy Valley Insider 30. Use it today, and you can get through 30 days free. And we have all kinds of scoop on there, all kinds of stuff. Be sure to check it out. Other than that, please hit the subscribe button if you're listening to us on YouTube. It's free. It helps us out, helps us build our brand. And if you're listening on one of your podcasting apps, whether it be Spotify, Apple Pods, Google, et cetera, give us a rating and a follow on there as well. It definitely helps us to spread the word and get our podcast to more Penn State fans and all of Nittany Nation. So for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.